So yes, this is the big question of the day. There's always a question of the day when it comes to professional wrestling, and that is the Bloodline story in the end of 2024, I suppose, going on too long, or are we rushing it? Most people are actually saying the latter. Also, do not forget, I am the Proteus Progress Champion, or the Progress Proteus Champion. I'm going to keep talking about this for a while. I'm just going to throw it over my shoulder today, and this means that my opinion... My opinions are better than all other opinions. Of course, that is not true. But we did have Monday Night Raw last week, or last night I should say, which was taped yesterday in Saudi Arabia. So these tapings are getting totally wild and totally out of control. And I would argue, despite or otherwise Damian Priest becoming the #1 contender, the big thing that everybody does want to talk about is the Sami Zayn, Jimmy Uso, and Jey Uso segment, which surely is heading to SmackDown on Friday, where at the very least we'll take one step closer to the OJ Bloodline reforming, going on to Survivor Series to compete in War Games. Thank you, Mr. Regal. Now, I find it hard to agree with people that say that they're rushing it. Like, if we take it over the last sort of month or so, I certainly know what you mean. All of a sudden, Jimmy was back with Roman. Then all of a sudden, Jey was like, I can't stand you, Jimmy. And then they were just friends again. Although, we are playing out the whole I do not trust you, Mr. Reigns, after you emotionally manipulated me for around about 4 years. That's the date I always keep in my head. And the Sami Zayn stuff, I think, actually feels well-timed. Like, he got involved when he saw that Jey Uso was kind of leaning back towards the Bloodline. He obviously tried to talk to Solo Sikoa. That didn't work. He comes out with Crown Jewel, does the whole, I'm going to pretend to join the Bloodline 2.0. Not really. I'm going back with my OG guys. But I think that's why Raw last night worked for me as well as it did. Because Sami Zayn is like, listen, Jey, I love you. You're my bro. Ties into the story from last year, 2 years ago, whenever the flub it was. But you, Jimmy, we used to be dogs, but I don't trust you that much. And Roman Reigns, he can absolutely kiss my butt because Sami Zayn is such a great performer because he comes across like a real person. And he actually said, we have these moments together, but what happened after 60 seconds? It all fell apart. We went to crush Solo, and I accidentally booted Roman in the face, and now Roman thinks he's doing it on purpose. He doesn't want to be pulled back into that void. So this is why Sami Zayn was so good when the Bloodline was at its hottest, and this is why he's so good now, because he comes across like an actual person, and we can actually relate to him and go, man, that's how I would feel too. He has real emotions. And I also just kind of think, again, tying it into what I keep going back to, this has been going on since the middle of 2020, and we know that Survivor Series is on the cards. We know that's happening around about 3 to 4 weeks. I think sometimes you can get the leeway to sort of hit fast forward because we have invested so much time, but in the back end, right? As soon as the Netflix January Raw show thingamajig starts, all of a sudden Cena's going to be back and The Rock's probably going to be back and we're going to be building to WrestleMania. I just kind of feel that if we don't back end it in 2024, then it will get lost in the shovel, which is not what I want. And ultimately, we're in the final stretch here. Like, eventually, the Bloodline 2.0 will lose to the OG Bloodline, and you don't need to carry it on. I don't think necessarily you need a Sami Zayn and Jey Uso tag team. There's certainly a question about what we do with the Usos, because when I don't think they'll go their separate ways. They'll always be an entity, and I'm sure the Bloodline will always be a foundation that they work from. But while I'd love to see the Usos in some feuds, I also don't want Jey Uso to be taken out of that singles scene, because again, I loved his IC title run. There was a report, I believe, I could get this wrong, I think in October or a recent month, he outsold CM Punk and Roman Reigns combined when it came to merchandise. So you can talk about whatever you want to do with the character or the work rate or anything like that. But of course, WWE are going to see those figures like, man, we've got to do something with this Mother Hubbard. Otherwise, you're just not doing right by him. If the fans are that into him, he needs to be showcased in a different way. And the tag team scene could also benefit from Jimmy and Jey being back together, and whatever Roman Reigns does is what Roman Reigns does. I think that's also going to tie into what we're doing at WrestleMania 41. People keep going back and forth about whether The Rock is going to be there. I presume he will be. We did a video about this a few weeks ago. I just don't see why he wouldn't. I think it would be a huge disappointment. If it's not WrestleMania, it'll at least be some point at 2025. But then, are we going to do Roman versus Cody versus Rock? Do we do Roman versus Solo? Do we do Roman versus Jacob Fatu? Does that have enough weight to it? I mean, it certainly does if Roman's not going into the main event, but is Roman Reigns going to be able to say, actually, no, there's 2 main events and I'm going to be one of them? So I don't think this part feels rushed. I think getting Sami Zayn back into the mix is going to make you feel warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum. ProWrestlingTees.com/Simon Miller to buy that stupid tee along with other ones. And you want them to be back together properly, depending on what we're going to do on Friday, on the SmackDown before Survivor Series, which again is in a few weeks' time, because you need to kind of draw that line. And given that the Bloodline 2.0 won at Crown Jewel, I'd have to assume that the Bloodline OG win at War Games, whatever you want to call it, and then we have to do a third match. Or does the third match then splinter off into tag teams and singles, and who is Sami Zayn going to work? And my secret dream, this is never going to happen. This is just crazy, crazy fantasy booking, is that somehow Kevin Owens becomes the world champion. He faces Sami Zayn at WrestleMania. How that would even work, I don't know. You'd have to have so many obstacles to get through. But let's not forget too, we're also teasing the Randy Orton Cody Rhodes stuff as well. I had a big chat about this on the Positive Wrestling podcast. Search for Simon Miller's Pro Wrestling Podcast. I need to update that. But again, you can see it here on the YouTube channel or on your app of choice. I don't really know whether we're going to do that before WrestleMania or after WrestleMania. When is the best time to do it? Once again, does it get lost in the shuffle if we try and squeeze it in before that April show? But again, April is a long way away because WWE has moved WrestleMania 41 to the middle of April as opposed to the start of April, which does bring up its own questions and challenges too. But Sami Zayn to me is just underrated, even though people do praise him, and his interactions with the Usos on this Raw was the biggest story point, as was everything we did at Crown Jewel as well. And otherwise, it was just what we did in the main event, which was Damian Priest versus Seth Rollins versus Sheamus. It felt very out of nowhere, but he was so over. Made me happy versus Dominic Mysterio. I said this on Ups and Downs. Of course, you can click the card or go check that out on What Culture Wrestling, and please subscribe to me and subscribe to them as well. It's kind of, I would have put Dominic Mysterio into the number one contendership position. I mean, it's not a bad thing, Damian Priest getting it, because Damian Priest now, as we do get to the end of the year, has established himself as a main eventer. I mean, what a flipping 12 months this guy has had. Becomes a champion in April. I think it was the SummerSlam match with Gunther when he lost the title where he really underlined, I can do this, man. I can have the power. You can see they're investing more into his entrance and presentation. Comes out, it looks like some kind of hell demon that we all want to be friends with. So I have no problem them doing it, be it at Saturday Night's Main Event or on that Netflix show. I don't think it's going to be at Survivor Series. There's some videos you can see on social media that WWE posted where they're keeping it ambiguous for now, which is interesting. I think it could tie into something with CM Punk when we are back from Saudi. But Dominic Mysterio getting that win over Damian Priest last week has now kind of been undone because Damian Priest just beat him. And WWE is way better at this these days. But I think sometimes it's almost like Stockholm Syndrome, when something just stays in your head. And WWE was such a 50-50 booking territory, where it's like, you beat me, I beat you, and then everyone has a good time. But when we do that again now, it's a bit like, oh man, oh man. But I think Dominic Mysterio will get his due at some point. Again, maybe outside the other end of WrestleMania. And while Damian Priest will lose to Gunther, I still think it's good for him to be in that role. I just don't want the Judgment Day to screw over Damian Priest. I think that would be undoing a lot of the good work that we have done. But otherwise, I can't really see how else Damian loses, unless Dominic screws him over. That's okay. I understand that we've already kind of done that feud, but I think there's something within that. But I'm not going to get mad at those four guys going at it. I love the fact that Bronson Reed came in there and destroyed everyone, especially Seth Rollins, who is now officially dead. And I should presume we do a stipulation match with those two at Survivor Series. What that would be, I don't know. And Bronson has to win, which is very intriguing. This is why and we talked about this in the video on Sunday, where I kind of feel like Bronson Reed should have won the first match, and it almost would have been better if Seth had won 2 and 3. But I don't know. I mean, all I care about is at the other end of this, Bronson Reed kind of being in a position that Damian Priest was at the start of 2024, and we can just elevate him in 2025. He could be the Intercontinental Champion. You could shift the rosters around and give him the US title. And if that goes well, I think you could absolutely move him into the World Championship scene. And that's something that WWE has been great at over the last few years. There's always somebody else ready to challenge, which is probably why it's okay if we do CM Punk versus Gunther at Survivor Series. Because even knowing that Damian Priest is waiting in the wings, I'd still, because it's CM Punk, I would never trust myself entirely that he wouldn't not win the title. And then what does that do at WrestleMania? Like, maybe that night one of WrestleMania, even with all the other matches that we could potentially have, maybe we have penciled in CM Punk versus Seth Rollins for a championship, which is what we were going to do in 2024 before the Royal Rumble and before everything with Drew McIntyre. We bring up Drew's name. He's taking some time away at the moment because of family issues, and I think he just deserves a break, let's face it. But you don't want to lose everything we've crafted with him too, which is why 2025 on paper looks great. Like, even if you started to lose people, which we don't want, there's just somebody to step in all the time. And even with CM Punk, let's say the business was terrible in July for some reason, which I don't foresee happening, you could just do CM Punk versus Roman Reigns. Everyone's going to tune in and everyone's going to go crazy. I like the Women's Battle Royal just because Io Sky being in the number one contender spot, I'm always going to be supportive of because I think she's great. I actually think she should win the belt, given that this is clearly a pivot after everything that happened with Rhea Ripley, and all the best to her. The opening segment wasn't really for me because I have a pet peeve, and you can say, Simon, you're an idiot. You're 100% correct. But if you have tag team champions, I want them to focus on the tag team division. And when you have a women's champion, I want them to focus on the singles division. Because when you start muddying them up, I just think one title always suffers, and it's always the women's tag team titles. going back to stuff that we've done in 2024, I think it's probably the best year for those belts. And a huge reason for that is because Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill are superstars. So WWE is always going to remember to feature them. But the last thing I want to happen is those two break up and probably have the feud at WrestleMania 41 and then fall back into the ether. And I think as soon as you start heading in this direction, you risk doing that. But at the same time, Liv and Raquel versus those two. Here's my other issue with it. It's a good match and it'll be fun. And hopefully we can use it to get I wear sunglasses so I'm a heel now Raquel over a bit more. But it just means that Liv Morgan doesn't have a proper feud, and that's something that she has been missing because the Rhea Ripley stuff was good, but it wasn't gone by the wayside, but I think it was time to pull the trigger, but now she's gone away, which is another reason I would love it if Io Sky won that belt, because then all of a sudden you have a program that's just there that you can run through till the end of the year, and then Liv Morgan can win it back on that Netflix show, right? They're clearly going to turn that into a mega pay-per-view, because from Survivor Series all the way through to the Royal Rumble, which is a week later now in February, they don't have anything. So again, Saturday Night's Main Event and that Netflix show. So, but the Royal Rumble, or the Battle Royal, I should say, made up for it. Again, Io Sky winning. Nice to see Lyra Valkyria back. She keeps coming and going. It's very strange. But Io Sky right now as a babyface has traction. And Io Sky is doing some of her best consistent work on the main roster. And it was never that she wasn't doing good work before, but it just all of a sudden feels like someone said, oh, you can go crazy now if you want. Io Sky's like, I'm going to. So that was fun as well. Match of the night was Chad Gable versus Dragon Lee. We should just run that back on pay-per-view and give them added time. It did end with shenanigans, and WWE has kind of fallen into a bad pattern with them, but on this show, it was far better. And I'm so pumped with everything with the New Day. They lost to the Viking Raiders, or the War Raiders, I should say. But, we are continuing to tease the tension because Kofi was like, it's your fault we lost. And Xavier was like, it's your fault. And I believe their 10-year anniversary is either next week or the week after that. And again, there's a lot of social media clips now that Raw has been condensed to 2 hours. And Adam Pearce has essentially said a decade. It's amazing. You guys are one of the best ever, which I do believe. We're going to do a big celebration on Monday Night Raw, which could end with them breaking up and then Big E reuniting them at WrestleMania, or maybe you have Big E during that too. I mean, I actually like that idea. I think finally Xavier Woods should go heel on Kofi. He did a big old 6-month program. It doesn't have to be that long. Again, we do have these other events. But it ends with Big E coming back, whether he's able to go, whether he's not able to go. I just want to see that pairing together again, especially because it has been 10 years. Now, in my dreams, Big E would win the Royal Rumble and go on to win the championship, but I think, especially given recent events, I just want people to be healthy and I just want people to be happy. And while I understand it must be so hard to give up professional wrestling when it's taken away from you, we don't need any more bad news and we don't need any more sadness. So Raw kind of rocketed through everything. I still felt there was a crown jewel hangover. I'm actually thinking on SmackDown when we go super hard with the Bloodline, when we get back into the stories that we want to tell, because I'm completely convinced that WWE saw this crown jewel especially as like, oh, man, it's just in the way with these giant championship belts that we do have to put on people. But, there was also stuff with Gunther essentially telling Ludwig Kaiser you need to do better, or who knows what I'm going to do. And Gunther is just a man. He talked about Cody Rhodes and when I lost. What are you going to do? Get out my face, Jackie Redmond, and stop asking these annoying questions. But that's what it should be. And I think there is still this idea in wrestling that you can't lose. Of course you can. You just need to have the character, the personality, and understand what promo you need to cut in order to feel it's like a star. I still have the issue that Cody Rhodes should come out on SmackDown going, well, I'm challenging Gunther for the World Championship. I just beat him. But we're not going to do that. But hey-ho, it is what it is. We've talked about it 1,000 times. Again, we're out the other end, so I just do want to focus on Survivor Series. And, of course, the Wyatt Six kidnapped The Miz, which is 100% a crime. That's kind of fun. It's kind of nice. I think it will probably tie into something with the Final Testament. And Karrion Kross on social media is doing very good work right now, so I hope that WWE can take elements of what we're doing there and put it on Raw, because it really made me laugh. He's quite good. He's quite good, Karrion Kross, and the character he's playing now is the best one that he has played, apart from maybe what he did in NXT. But that's just not going to work on the main roster, especially the way we're booking things right now. And actually, going back to that tag team title stuff, I would have the War Raiders win the tag team championships, because while the women's one have had a really good sort of Q2 or sort of latter part of 2024, both championships, until the Motor City Machine Guns won the SmackDown one, just lost in the shuffle. They weren't being defended on pay-per-views. And I love Finn Balor and JD McDonough. Finn Balor especially is an underrated gem, not just in WWE, but his influence on the entire business is incredibly underrated. But there's just nothing for them right now. And if we are turning the Viking Raiders into the War Raiders and they're going to be this big deal, I would give them the championship on whatever show you want to do it on. They're moving into 2025. Let's build up these teams and make sure there's programs there. I would get to WrestleMania and put the belts back together. They're not going to do that. It's never going to happen. Especially because when the Netflix show does start, it's already out there, the rumors. They want Cody Rhodes. They want CM Punk. They want Roman Reigns. I'm sure they want Charlotte and Becky. And trying to balance that is going to be really tough. So, I mean, it could be a good thing. Maybe the brand split will be eased off even more. I'm not a huge fan of it because I think you can just showcase more people or tell the stories that people actually want to hear. So, I guess maybe you could get rid of one set of titles, but I just don't think WWE are going to do it so soon. I mean, it's been less than a year. It's been like 6 months. It really hasn't been great with the tag team titles this year, which is especially upsetting because at WrestleMania 38 with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn and the Usos, main eventing night 1, it just felt like the biggest thing in the world, and it was so cool. So let's just get back to that. Don't care how we get there, what we have to do. Let's just make sure we do it. So yes, a decent Raw, but the Bloodline stuff is taking over. And a lot of people are done with it, which is totally cool. I get that. But I'm just excited for that moment when they do. Well, they've already kind of done it, but do it properly. They can all do the ones. They can all do a big hug. Roman Reigns does need to start apologizing. But in retrospect, that's my favorite thing about the PLE over the weekend is that Jey Uso wouldn't tag him. Do you know what I mean? He's made it clear you're not the same guy to me you once were. I'm going to be my own man. I've won IC championships, and I sold a lot of Yeet merch, which apparently means a lot in the world of professional wrestling. But I think the last thing I do want to talk about before we do end it, I think I did talk about this, but talk about it again. But shout out to Baron Corbin, Tegan Nox, and Indy Hartwell, who did get released last week. There are rumors there could be more this week, so we'll get on those if we have to. It all depends on what they want to do. Sometimes I find like there's disparaging remarks, they don't carry on wrestling, they never really loved it. You are allowed to, pivot in your industry if you feel like doing something else. But again, all three of them can fit. Baron Corbin is just like a chameleon in wrestling. Think of some of the stuff we've given him. Think if we had given the sad Corbin gimmick to, I don't know, just anyone, pick somebody on the roster. I don't think they would have been able to make it work. And Baron always did. So I would love him to go to another promotion and actually be featured in the way that I think he does deserve. Indy Hartwell is just a terrific character. So once again, I don't know what her real name is. She'll have to change that, obviously. And depending on Tegan Nox's injuries, and she would know better than anybody, she could always go, man. And I actually think even an 85% Tegan Nox is a real asset to any wrestling promotion. So all the best to them. I think given how the wrestling landscape is, they're all going to be fine. Should they want to be fine? And if they want to go try something else, that's totally cool as well. I think sometimes we just need to cool our jets when it comes to what people are doing with their careers and to the absolute crazies that say things like, I'm glad they're gone. You're a horrible person. That's somebody's livelihood and it's somebody's dream. I mean, nobody wants to lose any kind of a job. But when you lose your dream job, that has to hit you a little bit harder, though, as I always say. Even if you only have a 6-month run at NXT, you totally smashed it as a wrestler. Imagine the first time you went to training and you took a bump and someone said you're going to get 6 months within the WWE system. I think that's absolutely incredible. And when you do come out, you can charge money independence. That's just how it works. So a decent episode of Raw. I really do hope that, it's kind of funny. I much prefer the 2 hours, but I'll also level with you and say it does kind of hit less for some reason. And I am also convinced in 2025 we'll go to 3 hours for Raw and 3 hours for SmackDown. It's great for the talent, right? I think it does give them a better platform to showcase themselves. But as somebody that is blessed and able to watch them every single week in their entirety, I do think 3 hours can be a bit laborious when you don't get it right. And when you do it for both shows, I think it can be a bit difficult. But yeah, Raw's an interesting thing at the moment. It's not popping me like it once was, but you have to have downtime. You know what I mean? We have 52 weeks of shows, 52 shows within a year. And not every single one can be a home run because who could write that many stories that would make sense? I think it'd actually be too much. So I don't want to say we're in a little bit of a lull, but I do see Crown Jewel as a getting off period where everyone could just chill. If you didn't watch Crown Jewel, you missed nothing. And basically the Better Bloodline segment happened on Raw anyway. Well, it depends how you look at it. But you still got all the juice from Saturday night anyway. So Survivor Series will be big. We're going to do 2 War Games matches. I think they're now pivoting to 4v4 on both of them as well. It used to be 5-on-5, but I think Rhea Ripley was going to be in there. That's cool as well. I'm still someone that actually thinks you should do 1 War Games. If it suits the men, do that. If it suits the women, do that. And it's also why I think the Royal Rumble, if we are going to extend all these events to 2 nights, should get that treatment, because a Royal Rumble one night, a Royal Rumble the other night is just better than having 2 Royal Rumbles. One is always going to affect the other. That's just how it works, which is why at one point I had the crazy idea. You don't call it the Royal Rumble, but you do another event where you shift the Royal Rumble to July, whatever it may be. And the men's one, well, it doesn't matter. You can do it either way around. It doesn't matter. You can just change it every single month. I just think it would be better. I just do. It's like when we used to do Hell in a Cell. There'd be 2 Hell in a Cell. That's way better now, because we're not treating it like something we have to do. It's something that nobody wants. Oh my gosh. But less is more within wrestling. It really, really is. And I think Raw, probably starting from next week, I think CM Punk's will be on next week's episode of Raw. And I think he's going to go after Gunther. And I think that's going to light a fire under anything. And obviously SmackDown is going to be holding the Bloodline stuff up. Paul Heyman is going to be the catalyst to get Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns back on the same page. It's going to be a big old pop. and it's going to be wonderful. Now, more important, please drop me a comment below and let me know what you thought about last night's Monday Night Raw. Like the video, share the video, subscribe, click the video on the screen, which is me talking about other wrestling nonsense. Otherwise, click that notification bell. Massage it as much as you can. GorillaMind.com/Simon. You can Simon get 10% off. They're always doing deals, though, so always check it out. It ships worldwide. Two things. One, I use these supplements, but they also are an affiliate of the channel, so they're helping me out as well. But I will promote nothing that I do not believe in, because I think transparency and honesty is way more important than anything in this stupid life. Otherwise, you can go to GoGo Fitness and use code Simon20 to use his at-home app. Again, I was part of making that, so I believe in that too. Patreon.com/Simon316 if you want to support me that way. Come give me a follow at Simon316 on all social media. Simon J. Miller on the TikTok. Simon Miller on Cameo. Had a real good October for those, and we did donate all of that money to good causes, so thank you for that. And again, ProWrestlingTees.com/Simon Miller if you'd like to buy a dumb wrestling tee. New designs all the time. Otherwise, I appreciate you, my friends. Take care. British champion. Simon Miller signing off.